Yeah, so how do you make money on, I'll just give you a bit of like I was renting, like my apartment, 2-bedroom
Yep.
in New West. My strata fees were $411 a month.
Yep.
Okay, so, and then on top of it, I bought some hydro, and I got, so even at...
And hydro, of course, is included, and Cablevision. So,
yeah.
Well, the question around our business model is that we actually use the ground floor of most of our SROs for a retail tenant. And when we buy a building like this one, and we put a retail tenant on the main floor, in this case it's the restaurant down below, as you know, that is one of the primary revenue sources for the building. So it's a combination of a revenue source in the basement and on the ground floor that wasn't there before, because that was simply closed up and boarded up for storage and was not occupied, and a combination of running these rooms fairly efficiently, so that, because they're not large rooms, they're not a lot of square footage, so in reality, if you're renting something for $500 and it's 100 square feet, if you look at a number of rooms and the size of the building and the relative cost of the building, there is an economic model that works. But for us, it works primarily because we actually invest in the building and in putting retail on the ground floor, because there's quite significant additional income that comes from the ground floor tenant that helps to pay some of the additional costs associated. So your strata fees that you talked about, 50% of those will probably be covered by the person that's on the ground floor. So that's how the business model works. And virtually all of our properties, we own the Lotus Hotel, the American Hotel, this building across the street, 90 Alexander, where they're doing the filming, that's our building. So the retail tenant supports the tenants above. So that's how that's the business model that allows us to, it doesn't give us enough of a return to dramatically change the buildings, but it does give us enough that we can completely upgrade the washrooms, change the lighting, put in security system, and make it so that it's safe, clean, and reasonably priced for people in the Downtown Eastside. So there's a model there that does work.
So in other words, it sounds like you're probably just breaking even.
This particular building has been a struggle, simply because the city had required some seismic upgrading to the building in order for us to use the downstairs and the basement. So that ended up by costing us much more than we had anticipated, no question about that. But in some cases where we don't have to do the seismic stuff, then it isn't too bad, dependent upon who's on the ground floor, what's happening. This building over here, for example, has had retail tenants. There's a restaurant, there's a bar underneath that building for the last 20 years. So that's not so much of a problem. We don't have to upgrade the rest of the building, but we had to upgrade that building because it was a new change of use to put the restaurant in. So yes, that was a particular challenging project cost-wise.
Are all those rooms designated SRAs?
Yes, they are.
So all
36.
All 36 of them.
Yes.
And the renovations haven't made any change to this designation. You still
no. Regardless of what you do, they are on the SRA register. So you can do what you want. You can make them into the most luxury penthouse in the world. They would still be SRAs. So they're on the register, they stay there, they have to be single room, you can't combine them. You can't just take out a wall and make a bigger one for two, and they only have 18 instead of 36. They are just what they are.
The only way really you can change the rent is when somebody moves out and then a new tenant.
Yeah, legally, of course, we can charge any rent we want, right? So if the market would bear, we could be charging $800 for one of these, 10 by 130 square feet. But the reality is that the market won't bear that, and nobody's going to want to live in a small room like this, for $800, where they have to share a bathroom. So the market is pretty self-leveling. The fact that those rooms are vacant, the 12 rooms, clearly tells you that there's not an over-demand versus supply. So it's very self-leveling. So the only additional comment that I would make to Wendy and the gang is that, there is no good purpose in what they're accusing us of. So the actual argument that they're putting out, which is we're gentrifying the neighbourhood, we're throwing out all the people, and we're going to make this luxury condominiums, and there'll be no more rooms in the Downtown Eastside, and all of the, I didn't even listen to half of the things that she said there. But there is no logical, fact-based argument around that, because you've got a bit more of an insight than most have. But most of these things I'm telling you are covered in this fact sheet. This fact sheet, by the way, we also sent to the city. So the city of Vancouver has this because they asked us, what's the deal there? And so I told them, this is the deal, this is how many rooms, that's how many are vacant. So they know, as you know, public record, this is the situation. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is it where's this negative opportunity, for the want of a better expression, that Wendy is referring to, how we're ruining the neighbourhood and gentrification is going to put everybody on the street and all of that. Where is that? Because those rooms might rent for 600 if they were all full and somebody wanted to go there. And of course, legally, we can charge any amount of rent for those rooms. And that other place you mentioned, they're charging $625 to $675 or $800 or whatever. I have no idea why they can do that or where that is or what the rationale is, but legally they can do that. And Wendy may scream and say, well, $875 is unreasonable for a room. I have no idea what that room is or how big it is or where it is, but legally there's nothing wrong with that. The good side of what we do, and we're in the business of trying to make money, we have a lot of properties, is that we don't take money from government. We're not supported by grants. We're just an independent business trying to make money. The BC housing buildings and SROs, the Marble Arch and all the ones that they're putting $13 million in upgrading, they'll be very nice. We don't have $13 million to put into whatever it is, 20 buildings that they had. And it would be nice to do that, but we're not interested in getting grants and all the rigmarole you have to go through to do that. We're just a private company, buying buildings that we see as an opportunity where we can put in commercial property on the ground floor. And this is a prime example. There was storage on the ground floor, boarded up for the last 45, 50 years. So if you saw any of the before pictures, there's probably some in the Vancouver archives, you'll see the ground floor is just boarded up. There's nothing there. So our attitude is that we're actually revitalizing the neighborhood. There's nothing bad at what we're doing, is we're creating employment in the area. People who might be working in that restaurant because they had a dishwasher who was working upstairs. Revitalizing the neighborhood and making it nicer is not a bad thing. While I have you here, when you walk out of here, if you walk over to 71 East Hastings, if you can remember that, I'll give you the... have a look at that. We are, just as we speak, building a hoarding in front of that. That building belongs to us. That's right at ground zero, Columbia and Hastings, and we're putting in 19 apartments in that building. There were 15 SROs in there, and the city's given us permission to do 4 additional rooms, fully self-contained units, 220 to 320 square feet, and we're building 19 rooms, putting back in there, again, rooms that haven't been used for 43 years. It's in the old BC collateral building. So you'll see a hoarding that's going up there today, and we expect that Wendy and the gang will be there next week, calling us all kinds of names.
Well, I think the concern that they have is that the welfare rate is 610.
Yep.
And so...
shelter is 375, right?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Shelter is 375.
Yeah, so what 375 works out to be is, that's the shelter rate that they give, but also if you look at, out of that total of 610, that's 61% of that income.
And most people some people will take that 375 and add $50 to make it $425, and then they will spend that on rent.
Yeah.
So they're spending a little more than that. I don't know what 425 divided into 600, but
But,
that's probably a higher proportion.
Yeah. But I think the concern there is with that rate, like like our RBC basically says that
Yep.
30% is about the limit.
Yep.
Of what they'll rent out at, or
Yep.
what they'll give you a mortgage for, and stuff. That's what they feel.
You shouldn't be paying more than a third in rent. No question about that.
Yeah. So even at 375, it looks like a lot of welfare people are paying maybe even over 60%.
Absolutely.
Of their income.
Yes, they are.
And so if the prices get very much beyond that, then there's an affordability issue.
There truly is,
Yeah.
and there is, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The welfare rates haven't changed in 25, 30 years, 25 years.
So, and I think that's the principal concern of this group is that if you look
Without a doubt.
So if you look at the demographics, like I've been looking at some of the blocks here, in P census,
Yeah.
you'll see that that there's 90% of people that are living below 20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so if you were to take 525
Yep.
and say, okay, that how much do you
75% of the. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so basically 90% of the people in that block,
Yep.
and there's 1,000 of them wouldn't be able to afford rents, or shouldn't, according to the bank, it's beyond what they can afford.
Absolutely, it is.
So I think their concern is that there's a population of people that are going to be forced out. So I'm just paraphrasing.
No, because it's a fact.
Yeah.
No, it's a total fact.
Yeah.
But the reality is that that's the responsibility of governments to deal with that. It's a social problem, right? The government determines that people on welfare need to live in this particular area, the Downtown Eastside. We believe it just creates a ghetto. So I'm diametrically opposed to that, and it's now being referred to as a ghetto, and it looks more like a ghetto every day. Governments have a responsibility either to build housing or support individuals if they need support, or to put welfare rates up. So the City of Vancouver can either support those individuals by giving them $200 a month or $100 a month to subsidize their housing. City of the province can actually increase the welfare rates. All of these are tools that governments can use to solve the problem. But the reality is the alternative for a private company is, when you go home, look at the Clifton Rooms on Brown Street. There's a hotel there that they have 100 and something violations against the City of Vancouver for everything you can possibly imagine. Unsafe living conditions, rats, just a place that if you walked in there, you would say nobody should live here. Nobody. They don't give a damn. The building's listed for 8.5 million. They haven't spent a penny on the building. They haven't cleaned it up. They haven't. They're 100. Then now the City of Vancouver's taking them to Supreme Court or somewhere to try to get them to fix up the building, and they don't give a damn. They just take the welfare checks that come to them every month, and that's the alternative. So the alternative is we have a ghetto where individuals can live for $375 a month, or you have somebody like us who will have a blended rate within our buildings, and most of our buildings have some people at the welfare rate, and most of our buildings are now aimed at the working poor or people on low income. Because I have to tell you, from a business standpoint, renting to welfare individuals is truly a lose-lose, because not only do the rooms get destroyed, but there is no revenue to do any kind of repairs and maintenance, and that's not a business model that we're interested in. We're not interested in being a slum landlord, because that's what those people are. That what Wendy says, if Wendy was sitting here, because I asked her the question, Wendy's attitude is, I don't care what conditions the rooms are, as long as they're welfare rates. And I said, so you'd rather have people living in the equivalent of a ghetto in a third world country kind of room where there's rats running around and there's holes in the walls and it's a disgusting place to live, rather than an economic model like ours? And they say absolutely yes. That's their attitude. My attitude is, we're not interested. It's not our business model. We're not interested. It's not what we do. We're a private company. We're proud of what we do in creating, affordable, safe housing for students and people on low income. But it's not our responsibility to house all the people at welfare.
So I guess going forward, though, you're, as you were saying, you're going to be renting to working poor and to people, and not to people at welfare.
Well, a 525 is not welfare, because that's 80% of welfare.
Yeah.
So it's quite conceivable that if we had for example, 622 West Pender, there are no welfare rate rooms in there. We spent a couple of $1 million and completely renovated that hotel, and those are renting between 500 and 600. And I don't need to apologise for it. There are no welfare, and that building is immaculate. Go to the website and have a look. We did that 2.5, 3 years ago, and the place is just as spick and span and just as good today as it was when we finished it. And it's a joy to run the building. We don't have drug dealers. We don't have all the other challenges that come with 259. It's a nice civilized building, and there are no welfare rates in there. And we couldn't have done it. I understand where Wendy and the gang are coming from. They're just trying to use us as a tool to be able to bash governments over the head with. And I understand that. I don't like it. I don't think it's fair, because I think what we do and what we create is valuable. But that's their right. And our right is to try to tell the truth and the facts as we see them, and we'll let people like you and the public judge. If that's what the public, the general public, not Wendy, doesn't matter what Wendy wants. If the general public, the people of Vancouver, if that's what they want, that's where they want their tax dollars to go, then they should challenge the politicians to buy the buildings and rent them out at welfare. And all they have to do is find the money. But the public policy is such that they're not interested in doing that. Welfare rates haven't changed in 20 years. I think it went up $50 in 1993 or something. So the province has no intention of supporting that as an initiative. So they don't agree with Wendy. City of Vancouver has no intention of subsidizing these places, so they don't support Wendy. Why would a private person who bought that building at X amount of dollars and is now trying to make it a business, why would we do that when the government and the taxpayers of BC are not prepared to fund it? And really that's the bottom line. And on top of that, there is a belief that if you increase welfare, more people will come to this province, more people will be on welfare, and the problem will persist.
Yeah. But in the meantime, what do we do with those, I don't know, 6,000, 9,000 people that are living below the poverty line? And
that's a bigger philosophical question. We should, make an appointment and speak to council. What is the plan? What do we do? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But whatever they've been doing for 20 years in this area is not working. And the LAP committee plan, which is going to make this Downtown Eastside an area where and if you build anything, it has to be 60% social housing and not 20, which is required today. That'll kill every single project that would ever come to this area, so nobody would ever build. It's out of the question to build, one with 60% social housing, 20%, and there's only been 3 buildings that have been built in the last 5 years. So at 60%, that'll be zero forever.